Sawadee Cab, Jed here from Thailand, Myland. A lot of people only look at my latest videos and don't look back on my older videos, so I've decided to put a few relevant ones on here again for anyone who might have missed them the first time around. This one is comparison costs for Thailand with 5 other countries that I've lived in. Here from Thailand, Myland, retiring disgracefully. As you can see, the tide's out here in Hua Hin, and all the rocks are showing. This be a warning to you if you come into Hua Hin. A lot of the time these rocks are underwater and you don't see them until you walk out, and you can cut your feet pretty badly. And my advice to you is don't swim if you can't see the rocks, because I've cut my feet to ribbons a few times on this beach. It's better to go a little bit down the road there, which is where that mountain is, and go into Kautakiab or somewhere in between where there's not so many rocks. I've lived in 10 countries in my lifetime. I was born in the UK, but I've lived and worked in Jamaica, Bermuda, Australia, Falkland Islands, Papua New Guinea, Philippines, Singapore, the USA, and now Thailand. 5 of those countries, the UK, Jamaica, Bermuda, the USA and Australia, they were my favourite countries, and countries that I could quite easily have retired to if the cost of living had been more accommodating to live there. Though the weather in the UK also put me off, I don't think I could ever retire back to the UK. So the cost of living and the weather were the 2 main criteria for why I chose Thailand over other places I was looking at. Another reason that I decided to retire to Thailand was the crime statistics here compared to the other countries that I was looking at the time. In today's video, I'm going to show you some of the cost comparisons for those 5 countries compared to my living in Thailand. And I hope that it will help you to understand why I chose Thailand to live over those 5 countries. My comparisons are between Hua Hin and London in the UK, where I lived much of my life, the Gold Coast in Queensland, Australia, Hamilton in Bermuda, Kingston town in Jamaica, and Tampa in Florida. So let's start with the country of my birth, but before we do that, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe and push the like button, because it'll help me a lot with my YouTube. I'm trying to get recognized on here, and also it'll help a lot of the people who are thinking about coming here. If you have some sort of comments to make, if you can want to say something on my channel that might help people to retire here or to come here and live, and that's always a bonus if we can all help each other. First off, consumer prices in London are 116% higher than here in Hua Hin. Rent prices are 506% higher than Hua Hin, and restaurant prices are about 232% higher than here in Hua Hin. Grocery prices are 46.9% higher, and local purchasing power in London is 134% higher than here in Hua Hin. Here's some comparisons of supermarket prices for groceries, and as you can see, the UK, or London in this instance, is a lot more than in Hua Hin, as you expect it to be, a big city like London. But having said that, Bangkok, Thailand's capital city, is still a lot cheaper than London for most things that you're gonna buy in a big city. A meal in an inexpensive restaurant will cost you about 100 baht here, whereas in London it'll cost you 627 baht. Mid-range is about 1,000 baht here, which would be close to 3,000 in London. McDonald's, very similar actually, still a 46% different, but still a little bit more in London. Domestic beer is 272% more in London than here, and your imported beers are about 114% more in London than here. If you want to go out and have a cappuccino, that's going to cost you about a third of the price of what it would do in London. Whereas filling up your car or motorbike will cost you around about 71% more in London than Hua Hin. When it comes to rental properties, obviously London's going to be a lot more expensive than Hua Hin. As you can see there, some prices are around about 600% more than what you'd pay in Hua Hin. And the same goes for utilities. You're going to be paying around about 400% more for your electricity, heating, cooling, etc. Your mobile phones are about 226% more in London, and your internet is about 138% more in London than in Hua Hin. So that brings us to another important factor when it comes to moving to another country: crime. And if you can look at the chart there, you'll see that London has more crime than Hua Hin does. Probably the only place where it wouldn't be, and that would be the one at the bottom there, with corruption and bribery. Everywhere in Thailand you're going to find that's going to be a lot more than in anywhere else in the UK. It's just that type of country. But on the whole, Hua Hin would be a lot safer to live in than London. So next up is Gold Coast in Australia, a place that I know very well. All my family live there. I spent many happy years there living on the Gold Coast. A lot more expensive there to live now than when I first came in 1974. Very cheap in those days, but consumer prices are 107% higher on the Gold Coast than in Hua Hin. Rent prices are around about 274% higher. Restaurant prices are 184% higher. Grocery prices are 78% higher, and the local purchasing power is 202% higher on the Gold Coast than Hua Hin. You'll find that most grocery products on the Gold Coast will be a lot more expensive than in Hua Hin, the exception being perhaps dairy, beef and lamb. Beef is not very popular here in Thailand, and most of it's imported, and anything that's imported for Farang is always going to be more expensive, with a big tax hike put on the product. They do have buffalo here instead of beef, but you'll find that's very tough, and I think most expats eat imported beef if they're going to have a steak here in Hua Hin. Eating out, a meal in an inexpensive restaurant will cost you 100 baht here in Hua Hin, where on the Gold Coast average 533 baht. Mid-range restaurant would be 1,000 baht Hua Hin, it'd be double that in Gold Coast. A McDonald's would be 83% more than what it would cost you here in Hua Hin. Domestic beer 180% more. An imported beer will cost you 143% more, and you're going to pay 138% more for a cappuccino than what you would in Hua Hin. There's not a massive hike in petrol, they're quite similar. Gold Coast is only about 4.3% more than what you'd pay in Hua Hin. The difference being that most people in Hua Hin drive motorbikes, and you only pay a little bit for your petrol for a motorbike compared to a car. Personally, I only pay about 100 baht a week, around about $4 Australian a week on petrol, so that's quite affordable here. When it comes to rentals, a one-bedroom apartment on the Gold Coast would cost you around about 48,000 baht, or the equivalent in Australian dollars, whereas in Hua Hin it'll be 12,000 baht. A three-bedroomed apartment outside of the city centre will cost you 62,000 baht in Australia, where it's only 21,000 baht in Hua Hin. So a lot cheaper in Hua Hin than on the Gold Coast. On the Gold Coast, when it comes to utilities like electric and water, etc., you'll pay 419% more than you will in Hua Hin. Your mobile phone will cost you 226% more, and your internet 135% more. There's not a great deal of crime on the Gold Coast, though lately there has been a lot of antisocial behaviour type crime from young hooligans, but it's still a lot more on the Gold Coast than in Hua Hin. The exception, of course, once again being the corruption and bribery, which happens here all the time. So that brings us to Tampa in Florida, where I used to live. I had a couple of condos and a couple of mobile homes over there. You'll find in Tampa that the consumer prices are around about 117% higher than in Hua Hin. Rent prices are 450% higher than in Hua Hin. Restaurant prices 236% higher. Grocery prices are 87% higher, and your local purchasing power is 227% higher in Tampa. When it comes to grocery shopping in Tampa, you'll find that just about everything is more expensive, some 300, 400, 500% more. About the only thing that's any cheaper is milk. When it comes to eating out, it'll cost you about 600% more to eat an inexpensive meal, 100% more for a mid-range meal. A domestic beer will cost you around about 200% more in Hua Hin, imported beer 185% more, and a cappuccino a couple of 100% more. When it comes to petrol, Tampa's the only place that comes in cheaper than Hua Hin. It comes in actually at 25% cheaper, which surprised me. When it comes to rents, an apartment in downtown Tampa will cost you 73,000 baht, or the equivalent, whereas in Hua Hin it's only 12,000. A three-bedroom apartment will cost you 136,000 baht, where it would be 22,000 baht in Hua Hin. So you're talking 400, 500, 600% more expensive to rent in Tampa than you would in Hua Hin. When it comes to your utilities in Tampa, your electric, heating, cooling, etc. is about 202% more. 1 minute of prepaid mobile, where it's 1.5 baht in Hua Hin, it's 9.79 baht in Tampa. And your internet is about 368% more as well, so a lot more expensive for those sort of things in Tampa in the USA. When it comes to crime, Tampa seems about the same as the other countries we've just talked about. A lot more crime in Tampa than in Hua Hin. When it comes to bribery and corruption, Hua Hin excels in that. So the fourth place that I've lived that I'd like to compare with Hua Hin would be Kingston town in Jamaica. It was beautiful when I lived there when I was younger, in my youth, but I was back there a few years ago, and it's not the same country as it was. A lot of crime, a lot of problems there. Compared to the other towns we've just had a look at, Kingston town is quite comparable to Hua Hin. It's a lot cheaper to live in somewhere like Kingston town than, say, Tampa. Consumer prices are 63% higher in Kingston than Hua Hin. Rent prices are 63% the same. Restaurant prices are 71% higher. Grocery prices are 55% higher in Kingston than Hua Hin. The local purchasing power is 29% lower in Kingston town than it is in Hua Hin. As you can see, grocery prices are a little bit more expensive in Kingston town than Hua Hin, with the exception of rice, which is cheaper for some reason, and beef, of all things. Beef's nearly 50% cheaper than in Hua Hin. But if you look at the milk price, it's 145% more in Kingston than in Hua Hin. A meal in an inexpensive restaurant will cost you about 125% more than in Hua Hin. In a mid-range, it'll be about 69% more. McDonald's meals more or less the same, only 12% different. Domestic beers more or less the same as well, and an imported beer will be 15% more. If you fancy a cappuccino, it'll be 131% more in your local Starbucks. If you're going to be driving in Jamaica, petrol's only about 5% more than what you'd pay in Hua Hin. Rents in Kingston town vary depending on where you want to live. They can be from 20% more than Hua Hin up to 111% more than Hua Hin. Whereas your basic electricity, cooling, etc. is 124% more, your prepaids 40% more, and your internet a whopping 186% more than Hua Hin. As you can see from the Numbeo chart, crime is quite rife in Kingston town and, well, Jamaica on the whole. It outdoes Hua Hin on every scale there, and even if you look at the bottom there at the corruption and bribery, Kingston town is even more corrupt than Hua Hin. The low crime rate was one of the reasons that I decided to retire in Thailand rather than somewhere like Jamaica. So that brings us to the last place on my list of places where I would like to have retired, where I lived before. I lived and worked in Bermuda a long time ago, and the good thing about that was I was paid to be there, and I got free accommodation and I got free food with the job, so I didn't have to worry about the cost of living. And it was expensive then, but by today's standards it's so much more expensive now than what it was then, and I definitely couldn't afford to live there on my pension now. As you can see, compared to Hua Hin, Bermuda's so much more expensive. Consumer prices are 315% higher than in Hua Hin. Rent prices are a whopping 764% higher than Hua Hin. Restaurant prices are 556% higher than in Hua Hin. Groceries 292%, and local purchasing power is 125% higher in Hamilton than in Hua Hin. So Bermuda's only a retirement destination for your mega-rich pop stars, actors and politicians, not your lowly retired chefs like me. As you can see, Hamilton is a lot more expensive than Hua Hin. You're going to be paying 700% more for a chicken breast. You're going to be paying 500% more for oranges. You're going to be paying 665% more for a bottle of water, and so on and so on. Even rice is 615% more than Hua Hin. So it's a very expensive place, is Hamilton in Bermuda. So if grocery prices are more expensive in Hamilton, then it goes hand in hand that restaurant prices will be also. An inexpensive meal would be a whopping 1,400% more in Hamilton. A mid-range meal 422% more. If you want McDonald's, it'll be 161% more than what you pay in Hua Hin. A domestic beer 415% more. An imported beer 257% more, and if you fancy a cappuccino, you're going to be paying 258% more at Starbucks for the pleasure of having a coffee. If you're going to be driving in Bermuda, it's going to cost you nearly double to fill up your tank petrol in Hamilton in Bermuda than it would in Hua Hin here in Thailand. You're really going to have to be mega rich if you want to rent somewhere in Hamilton in Bermuda for what you might pay $12,000 here in Hua Hin, you'd be paying 114,000 equivalent in Hamilton, and for a 3-bedroom apartment that might cost you 22,000 baht here will cost you the equivalent of 226,000, 902% markup. So it's very expensive to rent property in Hamilton. And likewise your utilities, etc. Electric and water is around about 334% more than Hua Hin. Your prepaid mobile is 1,000% more, and your internet data is 786% more. So Bermuda's not for the faint-hearted when it comes to spending money. When it comes to crime, you won't find anywhere much safer in the world than Hamilton in Bermuda. It's up there with Hua Hin for safety. If you look at the chart, everything's round about the same, except for the corruption that we have here in Hua Hin in Thailand. So that's the 5 places that I considered to retire in before I decided to retire here in Thailand. And as you can see, they're all more expensive, some not so more expensive. Jamaica's not too bad, but Bermuda is just on another scale. I'm glad I chose Thailand to retire. It's got all the things that I like to do here, and the places that I like to go. It's a beautiful country and it's large, unlike Bermuda and Jamaica. You've got a massive area there if you want to do some travelling, if you want to see some different ways of life. You know, not everything is the same. If you go to the islands, they're not the same as going to, say, somewhere like Chiang Mai. So yeah, I hope you got something out of this video. I really enjoyed making it, and if you like it, please subscribe and tell your friends about it. It will help me a lot. I'm trying to get recognised here on YouTube. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. So, if like I was before I moved to Thailand, you're sick of your own country that's getting more and more woke by the day, and where your rights are being slowly taken away from you by your so-called governments, where the country that you were born and grew up in is deteriorating so much that you don't even recognise it as your own anymore, maybe it's time to consider retiring or living overseas. If that's the case, take a look at my new book, The Retire in Thailand Handbook 2023. It's filled with everything that you need to know about living in the land of smiles. Or, if Thailand doesn't rock your boat, take a look at my book, The 10 Best Countries to Retire on Your Pension. Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Bali, Spain, Portugal, Costa Rica, Belize, and Panama. So thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers for now.